Title: The Grand Canyon Egyptian Sands Beyond the Horizon. To the listener, this book has been inspired by ancient fictional history and is written and narrated by AI. All rights to text and ideas reserved to Blunt Turtle Publishing. Chapter 1: The River of Stone. The desert wind carried whispers from the gods. Set drew his cloak tighter around his shoulders as he stood at the edge of the great western sea. For 40 days he and his small fleet had drifted upon it. A vast expanse of water unlike any the priests of Memphis had imagined. The maps of Egypt ended long before this endless horizon. Yet Set had followed the dream of Pharaoh Neferka, who believed the gods had hidden a second Nile beyond the sunset. Now, standing beneath the burning orb of Ra, Set wondered whether the dream had become madness. Behind him, 3 reed and timber ships groaned on the foreign shore. Their sails hung in tatters, salt crusted the oars. The crew, 50 men hardened by desert and sea alike, were too weary to celebrate the sight of land. They were the first Egyptians to reach the world beyond the endless waters, and already their hearts longed for home. "Commander," came the voice of Hapu, Set's second. The men asked if this is the land the priest spoke of, the one where the gods hid the treasures of creation. Set turned to him, his bronze chestplate gleaming dully in the setting sun. "If it is not," he said, "then we shall make it so." He knelt, pressing his palm into the strange red earth. It was dry and coarse, almost like powdered ochre. He lifted it to his face and inhaled the scent of iron and ancient fire. The gods had forged this land from stone and blood. Mountains rose in the distance like the spines of sleeping beasts, their tips crowned in snow. Between them ran a deep, endless wound in the earth, a canyon that cut the horizon in two. "The River of Stone," Set murmured. "By Ra, look at it." Even Hapu, who mocked the priest's tales, fell silent. The canyon stretched farther than the eye could see, cliffs layered in red, gold, and violet, as though the gods had painted their memories upon the walls. A faint mist hung over the chasm, and from deep within came the whisper of wind and water. Somewhere below, a river glimmered like a serpent's back. "The Nile of the West," Set said softly. "It exists." Hapu made the sign of protection. "Commander, no river should cut the world like that. It looks as if the gods themselves tore open the ground." "Then perhaps they did," Set said, "and perhaps they did so for us." That night they camped upon the canyon rim. Fires flickered, casting red light upon the sandstone walls. The men ate what little dried fish remained, speaking in hushed tones about home, about the temples along the Nile, the scent of papyrus and lotus. But Set did not eat. He sat apart, staring into the abyss. He could not shake the feeling that the canyon was alive. The wind rose and fell in rhythmic breaths. In its sighs, he thought he heard voices, echoes of long-dead kings, or perhaps something older still. The walls themselves seemed to shimmer in the firelight, revealing shapes that might have been faces, or tricks of shadow. A hand touched his shoulder. It was Neferet, the priestess who had joined their expedition at the pharaoh's command. Her eyes glowed like polished obsidian in the firelight. "You feel it too," she said quietly. Set nodded. "It is as if the gods are watching." "They are," Neferet replied. "This place was not meant for mortal eyes. The earth here remembers creation." She knelt beside him and cast grains of incense into the fire. The smoke rose in twisting patterns, then drifted toward the canyon. For a moment, Set thought he saw figures moving within it. Tall, shadowed beings carved of light and dust. "What do you see?" he asked. "Not what I see," she said. "What I hear. The voices of the ancients speak beneath the earth. They call this place Aruket, the second field of reeds, a mirror of paradise." Set looked into the chasm again. "Then we shall build here a new Egypt, beneath the eyes of the gods." Neferet's expression darkened. "To build here is to defy the balance. The gods sealed this land for a reason." "Perhaps," Set said, "or perhaps they left it for those bold enough to claim it." The days that followed tested their resolve. The climb down into the canyon was treacherous. Narrow paths wound between cliffs that glowed red at dawn and gold by dusk. Strange birds circled overhead, wings like copper, voices like flutes. The river at the bottom was colder than the Nile, fast and wild, its waters green with hidden life. Set ordered the men to establish camp along the river's curve, where flat terraces offered space for building. He envisioned temples carved directly into the canyon walls, sanctuaries of the sun and stars, where Egypt could endure beyond the desert's reach. They began with the first monument, a shrine to Ra hewn from the living rock. For weeks, the sound of chisels echoed through the canyon. Statues emerged from the stone falcons, lions, the sun disk. Yet the deeper they carved, the more strange symbols they uncovered, markings older than hieroglyphs. etched into the canyon's heart. One evening, Hapu came to Set bearing a stone tablet he'd unearthed from a cave. "These signs are not ours," he said, handing it to the commander. "They were here long before us." The carving showed tall figures with elongated skulls, standing beside a river that flowed through the sky. At their feet lay a burning sphere, the sun, or something greater. Around it were waves, storms, and fire. Nefret studied it and whispered, "They speak of the burning descent, when the gods fell from the heavens." Set traced the carvings with his fingers. "Then this place was their landing, their home, or their tomb," she said. That night, the earth trembled. At first, the men thought it was thunder, but the tremor grew until the canyon walls groaned like the hull of a sinking ship. Cracks spidered through the cliffs, boulders tumbled into the river below, sending up fountains of spray. "The gods are angry," cried one of the workers. Set drew his blade and shouted over the roar, "Hold your ground. To build for the gods is not to offend them." But even as he spoke, the fires along the river flickered and died. The stars above seemed to blur. From deep within the canyon came a low, hollow sound, like a drum beating in the bones of the world. Nefret fell to her knees, chanting prayers to appease the divine. Yet her voice was drowned by the rising wind. Dust whirled through the air, glowing faintly blue, and for an instant Set saw shapes moving within it. Tall figures of light, their faces hidden by golden masks. Then all went still. The wind died. The tremors ceased. The river flowed once more as though nothing had happened. But Set knew something had changed. When dawn came, they found half the shrine collapsed. The statue of Ra split down the middle. The crack ran clean through the god's face, dividing light from shadow. Set touched the broken stone and whispered, "So be it. We will rebuild, even if the gods would stop us." As the sun rose over the canyon's rim, its light ignited the walls in fire. The men worked in silence, glancing often at the cliffs above, where strange symbols now glowed faintly in the morning light. Set looked to Nefret. "This land tests us, but we are Egyptians. We do not yield." She met his gaze. "The gods will answer, Commander. The question is whether you will like their reply." Chapter 2. The Blood of the Stone. The morning after the quake, the canyon was silent. Even the river, once fierce and alive, seemed to flow with caution, as if afraid to disturb the gods. Dust still hung in the air, like smoke from a funeral pyre. Set stood before the broken shrine of Ra, its face cleaved in two, and felt the weight of his ambition pressing down upon him. He had dreamed of founding a new Egypt, a kingdom beyond the horizon, carved into the bones of the world. But now the earth itself seemed to warn him, "This place is not yours." Still, Set was not a man to yield to warnings. He had survived the deserts west of Thebes, storms upon the sea, and the mutinous whispers of his own men. The gods, he believed, favored those who defied fear. He turned to Hapu. "Gather the workers. We begin again." Hapu hesitated. "Commander, the men believe the quake was a sign. They say we have angered something beneath the stone." "Then tell them this," Set said, his voice cutting through the morning air. "If the gods wished us dead, we would not be standing here. We rebuild. The sun rises still. And that means Ra has not abandoned us." Reluctantly, Hapu bowed and went to rally the men. By midday, the clang of chisels once more echoed across the canyon. Dust rose in shimmering veils as they carved deeper into the walls. The air grew hotter, heavier. Strange veins of red stone ran through the rock, glinting in the sun like blood. Nefret watched them uneasily. "The rock bleeds," she murmured. Set glanced up from where he directed the masons. "It is iron," he said. "A sign of strength, or a warning," she replied. "The ancients who dwelled here may have left more than stone behind." Set ignored her caution. "Then let their ghosts watch. Egypt will rise even in the land of spirits." On the seventh day of carving, one of the workers struck something hollow behind the canyon wall. The sound rang like a drum. Excited shouts rose, and Set hurried to the site. Together, they widened the opening until a dark chamber yawned before them, a cavern hidden within the cliff. Torches flickered as Set led the descent. The air inside was cool and still, heavy with the scent of minerals and dust. The walls shimmered faintly, as if the stone itself held light. Carvings covered every surface, spirals, stars, rivers flowing upward into the sky. Nefret brushed her fingers along one of the symbols. "These are not words," she whispered. "They are music." Set frowned. "Music? The language of creation," she said. "The same tones the gods used to raise the first temples of stone." At the far end of the cavern stood an altar, not of sandstone, but of some dark, glass-like material. Upon it rested an orb the size of a man's head, perfectly smooth and clear. Within its depths, faint light swirled, not reflection, but motion. Set reached for it, Stop. Nefert's voice cracked through the silence. That is not meant to be touched. Set's hand hovered above the orb. Everything the gods made was meant to be understood, and to understand, we must touch. He grasped it. Instantly, pain seared through his palm. Not heat, but pressure, like the weight of an ocean forcing its way into his bones. Images flashed through his mind. Rivers running backward, stars falling like embers, a voice calling from beneath the earth. Then, as suddenly as it came, the pain vanished. Set staggered back, the orb still in his grip. Its light had dimmed, or perhaps it had entered him. Nefert knelt beside him. You have done what even priests would not dare, she said. Now the earth will remember your touch. Set opened his hand. The flesh of his palm bore a faint mark, a spiral surrounded by 7 rays, glowing briefly before fading. Then let it remember, he said hoarsely. I will carve my name into its heart. They carried the orb back to camp, setting it upon a stone pedestal near the river. That night, as the men slept, its faint glow pulsed like a heartbeat, casting ripples of light upon the canyon walls. The mark on Set's hand burned softly in rhythm. In his dreams, he saw the canyon alive, its cliffs rising like titans, its river boiling with fire. Above it all stood a figure of blinding gold, its face hidden by a mask shaped like the sun. Set of the Nile, the voice thundered, you have touched the blood of the earth. You would raise your kingdom upon the bones of the gods themselves. Set bowed within the dream. I seek only to bring glory to Ra. Then glory you shall have. The voice replied, but every dawn has its dusk. When he awoke, the orb's light had gone out. Weeks passed. The camp grew into a small settlement, tents replaced by stone dwellings, the shrine rebuilt, and new carvings spreading across the canyon walls. Yet the land seemed restless. Strange tremors rippled through the ground. The river rose and fell without reason. The workers began to whisper of shadows moving in the mist at night. Nefert warned Set again, the orb is not a gift, it is a key, and you have opened a door best left sealed. But Set, ever the visionary, only smiled. Every kingdom begins with a door. Ours will open to eternity. Then came the night of the red storm. Without warning, a crimson glow lit the horizon. The wind roared through the canyon, hot and dry as a forge. Lightning flashed, not from the clouds, but from the ground itself, leaping between the cliffs like veins of fire. The orb upon its pedestal blazed to life. Set raced toward it as the men shouted and scattered. The light poured from it in blinding streams, carving symbols into the air, the same spirals and stars from the cavern walls. The earth shook. Rocks split. A deep rumble rose from beneath the river, as though something vast was waking. Nefert cried out over the storm. Set, you must cast it back. The land cannot bear its power. Set shielded his eyes. No, this is what we came for. The gods are with us. But even as he spoke, the orb cracked. A jagged line ran across its surface, and from within burst a column of light that pierced the sky. For a heartbeat, the entire canyon glowed like molten gold. Then came the silence. When Set opened his eyes, the light was gone. The storm had vanished. The orb lay shattered at his feet, its fragments pulsing faintly before fading to ash. Around him, the camp was in ruins. Fires burned along the riverbanks. Half the men were gone, swallowed by the quake, or lost to the storm. Nefert stood beside him, her face streaked with dust and tears. You have done it, she whispered. You have awakened what sleeps beneath the stone. Set stared at the canyon walls. Faint lines of red light traced through them like veins. The ground still hummed, low and steady, as if something far below was breathing. He clenched his marked hand, then let it wake. Egypt does not bow to ghosts. Chapter 3, The Breath Beneath the Earth. The sun rose blood-red over the canyon. Its light fell across the wreckage of the camp. Broken pillars, half-buried tools, shattered tents. The air was still heavy with the scent of smoke and stone. Of the 50 men who had crossed the western sea with Set, only 23 remained. The rest had vanished into the earth, taken by the storm, or the tremors that followed. Yet Set did not mourn. He stood at the canyon's edge, his cloak billowing in the wind, and watched the light creep across the cliffs. The storm had changed them. What had once been dull sandstone now shimmered faintly, veined with red and gold. Strange glyphs glowed along the walls, shifting and fading like breath upon glass. The land was alive. Commander, Hapu said quietly beside him. His voice trembled, though he tried to mask it. We cannot stay here. The men say this place is cursed. Set's gaze never left the horizon. The men say many things, yet they still live. And where there is life, there is duty. Duty to whom, Set? The pharaoh is half a world away. We are alone. Set turned, his eyes fierce in the morning light. We are never alone. The gods walk beside us, can you not feel it? Hapu hesitated. I feel something, yes, but I do not think it is the gods of Egypt. They rebuilt, day after day. The survivors carved deeper into the canyon walls, using what remained of their tools and courage. The new temples rose faster than before, not out of discipline, but desperation. The masons worked by torchlight, eyes darting toward the shadows that gathered near the cliff faces. Sometimes they heard whispers beneath the stone, low, rhythmic sounds like chanting from another world. Set ignored them. He had seen the vision in the storm. A golden figure standing above the canyon, its face radiant, its hands raised in blessing. That image drove him onward. The destruction had not been punishment. It had been birth. The land itself was awakening to receive Egypt's glory. He called the new city Akhetaru, the horizon of paradise. The first structure completed was the Temple of Ra Eternal, carved directly into the canyon wall. Its columns bore the mark of the spiral sun, the same symbol burned into Set's palm. Within, he placed what remained of the shattered orb in a golden chest, vowing to guard it until the gods revealed its purpose. Each night, he prayed before it, whispering into the darkness. Each night, something whispered back. Nefret no longer joined him in the rituals. She had withdrawn to the caves along the river, where she studied the symbols they had uncovered. Her once steady voice had grown strained, her eyes shadowed with sleeplessness. When she did speak, her words carried a tremor, not of fear, but of certainty. The canyon is not a place of beginnings, she told Set one evening. It is a wound. The orb was a seal, not a gift. You have broken it. Set brushed dust from his hands. Then I will make it whole again, with stone and will. You do not understand, she said. This land does not want to be healed. It remembers what it was. What was it, then? Set challenged. Nefret stared into the dark. A prison. That night, the dreams returned. Set stood once more within the canyon, but it was no longer made of stone. It breathed. The walls pulsed like flesh, veins of molten light coursing through them. From below came a sound like the heartbeat of the world, and the golden figure appeared again. Set of the Nile, the voice said, you raise monuments to eternity, yet eternity is not yours to command. Then why bring me here? Set demanded. Why show me this power if I am not meant to wield it? Because power reveals truth. The figure raised its hand, and the canyon floor split open. From the chasm rose shapes, immense beings formed of dust and light, their eyes hollow. Each bore the mark of the spiral sun upon its brow. We built as you build, the voice continued. We sought to rise above the gods who made us, and so we were buried, here in the hollow of the earth. Set fell to his knees. Then you are the ancients of Arket. You are the ones who came before. The figure's mask tilted. We are what remains of their defiance. Leave this place, child of the Nile, or you will join us. Set woke in a cold sweat, his hand burning where the mark lay. Outside, the night wind moaned through the canyon like a chorus of voices. In the distance, a faint light glimmered along the river, pale and shifting, as though something beneath the water moved with purpose. By the next morning, 3 more workers were gone. No one had seen them leave. Their tools were still where they had fallen asleep. The only sign of their passing was a trail of damp footprints leading toward the river, and then vanishing into it. Fear gripped the camp. Men refused to work near the water. Others whispered of shapes watching them from the cliffs. Hapu urged Set to abandon the settlement before more lives were lost. Set's patience finally broke. We did not cross the seas to cower like jackals. This place will remember our names, or it will drown in them. He gathered the men before the half-finished temple and lifted his sword high. You think the canyon alive? Then let it hear this. We are the children of Ra, and no darkness shall make us flee. His voice echoed from wall to wall. For a moment, the silence that followed seemed to accept his challenge. Then the canyon answered. The ground shuddered, once, then twice. Then with a deep, rolling rumble that made the cliffs quake, dust fell from the high ledges like rain. The river frothed, its surface rippling with sudden waves. From the water rose light. It coalesced into shapes, tall, slender forms glowing red and gold, their limbs flowing like liquid. Faces without features turned toward the camp. The men screamed and scattered. The figures moved slowly, almost gracefully, as if walking through memory itself. Set stood his ground. The mark on his palm blazed. Show yourselves, he shouted. Are you gods or shades? One of the beings stepped forward. Its body shimmered with patterns like the carvings in the cavern, spirals, stars, rivers in reverse. Its voice was not sound, but vibration, shaking the air around them. You have taken the blood of the earth, it said. You have broken the seal that held us. Now the breath returns to the deep. Nefret emerged from the shadows, her eyes wide. Set, do you see now? They are the ancients. Their prison is failing. Set's jaw tightened. Then I will bind them again. He raised his marked hand, and light flared from his skin. The nearest figure recoiled, its form flickering. The mark burned brighter, spreading up his arm like molten gold. The being's voice wavered. You carry the sun's E-scar. You think it grants dominion. It grants only passage. The others began to fade back into the water, their light sinking slowly until only ripples remained. The ground fell silent again. Hapu approached cautiously. Commander, what are they? Set turned to him, breathing hard. The first builders, the ones who shaped this land. And now, they answer to me. That night, as the survivors huddled in fear, Set stood alone at the edge of the river, staring at his reflection. The mark upon his skin glowed faintly beneath the moonlight. He whispered to the canyon, to the gods, to whatever listened beneath the stone. You call this place a prison, he said. Then I will make it a kingdom. And far below, in the black water, something stirred, something vast and patient, awakening to the sound of his voice. Chapter 4. The Kingdom of Dust. The days that followed the river's awakening were quiet, too quiet. The canyon no longer trembled. The sky remained a hard blue without cloud or wind, and even the river flowed in perfect stillness. The men said the land was holding its breath. To Set, it felt like obedience. He took it as a sign. They began to build again, faster, higher, stronger. Under Set's command, walls of red stone rose along the riverbank, their surfaces etched with the spiral sun from the canyon floor. Stairways climbed upward toward the rim like the ribs of a sleeping god. At night the walls glowed faintly, as if the stone remembered the light of the broken orb. Hapu no longer argued. He worked in silence, his eyes hollow from sleeplessness. Only Nefret opposed Set openly. This is not building, she told him as she watched the new temples take form. It is feeding. Each stone you raise strengthens what sleeps beneath us. Set smiled, a tired, haunted smile. Then perhaps it hungers for greatness. It hungers for freedom, she said, and you are giving it shape. Set's visions grew stronger. Each night, when he closed his eyes, he saw the canyon as it might become. A golden city gleaming between the cliffs, its towers crowned with fire, its river flowing with light instead of water. In the vision he stood upon a high balcony, crowned in the image of Ra, the sun himself bowing before his throne. He awoke from such dreams shaking, his hand burning with heat. When he looked at his palm, the spiral mark no longer lay flat. It pulsed faintly, alive beneath the skin. By day, he walked among his people with the fervor of a prophet. The gods do not send signs to test us, he told them. They send them to guide us. The earth beneath us breathes because we are giving it purpose. We are its voice. We are its hands. The men cheered because it was easier than fearing him. Nefret withdrew deeper into the caves, following the lines of light that now threaded the canyon walls. She traced them with lamp and ink, finding that they formed a vast pattern, an immense circle spanning miles of rock. Its heart directly beneath Set's temple. One night she ventured alone into a newly opened tunnel. There, beyond a curtain of crystal veins, she found a chamber older than any she had seen. The air inside pulsed faintly, warm and wet. In the center stood a column of black glass reaching from floor to ceiling. Within it, suspended as if in water, floated a figure, tall, human-shaped, but featureless. Its chest rose and fell with a slow, rhythmic motion. Nefret fell to her knees. The prison, she whispered, the god below. As she watched, the column throbbed once, sending a ripple through the chamber. The walls hummed with low vibration, and for a heartbeat she heard a voice, not in words, but in feeling, release. She fled. When she returned to Set's camp, he was addressing the workers from atop the half-finished pyramid of stone. Torches flared below him, the light dancing across his bronze armor, and the mark that now reached his elbow like a river of fire. The gods have chosen us, he cried. Already they lend us their strength. Look upon these walls, do you not see how they shine? The world will remember Akhederu as the birthplace of the new dawn. Nefret shouted over the crowd, you are digging into a grave, not raising a kingdom. Set looked down at her, his eyes burning with unnatural gold. And yet the dead rise to serve me. The crowd fell silent, for behind him, in the shadows of the temple entrance, shapes were moving, faint, translucent forms that glowed like embers. They resembled the lost workers who had vanished days before. They lifted the stones as if weightless, and carried them into place. Hapu whispered, trembling, Ra, forgive us. That night Nefret confronted Set within the temple. The golden chest that held the orb's fragments pulsed softly, as though something inside still lived. You are no longer yourself, she said. The light inside you is not the sun. It is the same fire that destroyed this place before. Set traced the edge of the chest with his fingers. Perhaps it destroyed because no hand was strong enough to command it. You think you can master creation? He turned, the light of the chest reflecting in his eyes. No, Neferet, I think I am creation. He opened the chest. The fragments within glimmered like dying stars. Their light spilled across the floor, spreading into lines that matched the pattern Neferet had seen in the caves. The vast circle beneath the canyon. The temple walls trembled. Far below, the earth answered with a slow, rolling breath. Neferet tried to strike the chest closed, but Set seized her wrist. His touch burned. You cannot stop what has already begun. The following days blurred into one another. The canyon grew warmer, the air thick with metallic scent. The sky itself seemed tinted red. The workers, those still living, moved like sleepwalkers, their eyes dull, their skin dusted with gold. The dead continued their labor beside them in silence. Set rarely spoke now. He spent his hours at the temple's heart, standing before the spreading lines of light. Each dawn they reached farther, threading outward through the canyon walls, connecting every structure like veins in a living body. Neferet watched from afar, powerless. She had seen the figure beneath the earth stirring within its crystal cage. Its hand had twitched once, sending cracks through the glass. The day the lines reached it, the cage would break. She wrote in her scrolls, if anyone should find this, know that the gods of Egypt did not abandon us. We abandoned them. Then came the second quake. It struck without warning, stronger than the first. Towers shattered, cliffs split, and the river rose in a wall of boiling water. The air glowed crimson. The pattern of light beneath the temple blazed white hot. Set stood upon the pyramid as the ground shook, his arms raised to the sky. Awake, he cried. Awake, O God of the deep. Let the Nile of stone flow again. The canyon answered with a roar. From the heart of the earth burst a column of fire and ash. The ground tore open, swallowing the temple and half the city. The river boiled into steam. The light in Set's arm erupted through his body, wrapping him in a halo of gold. Neferet, clinging to a crumbling ledge, saw the crystal column below shatter. The figure within opened its eyes, suns within darkness. It looked up toward Set. For an instant, all sound ceased. Then the canyon exhaled, a single, immense breath that turned stone to dust. When the storm of debris finally settled, the Grand Canyon was silent again. No voices, no tools, no chanting, only wind moving through ruins half buried in red sand. Of Akhetaru, nothing remained but the faint impression of walls, and a single pillar jutting from the ground like a broken bone. Deep within the earth, in a chamber lit by the last embers of the orb's power, a figure lay half buried in molten stone. Set's hand, still marked with the spiral sun, twitched once and was still. Above him, through miles of rock, the canyon breathed once more, and then slept. Chapter 5, Echoes in the Stone. 1,000 years passed. The canyon forgot their names. Wind became the only voice that moved between its cliffs, whispering through the labyrinth of red and gold. The river carved new paths through old ruins, erasing what had once been walls, pillars, and prayers. Yet not everything was lost. Far beneath the surface, sealed in stone and silence, the pulse of light still slept, dim, patient, waiting. The age of the new people. The first to return were wanderers. They came not from the Nile but from the endless plains to the east. Tribes who followed the paths of stars and rivers. The canyon drew them like a wound draws water. They built small dwellings along the rim, fashioned of clay and cedar, and spoke of the place as a living being. Tse Cupidzini, the stone that breathes. At night, they said, one could hear it sigh. Elders told stories around their fires, that beneath the earth slept a sun too proud to set, guarded by spirits of fire and shadow. To walk the canyon floor after dark was to walk between worlds. Few dared descend, but one did. Her name was Allah, a young woman of the canyon's western rim. She dreamed often of rivers that flowed through sand and of cities made of light. In her dreams she saw a man of bronze and gold standing at the heart of the canyon, calling to her. His voice echoed like wind through stone, "Wake me." When she awoke, the echo lingered, the descent of Allah. It was in the season of red dawns that Allah made her journey. She carried with her a bowl of water, a blade of obsidian, and a small clay idol painted with spirals. The elders warned her, the canyon remembers its builders. It remembers their pride. But Allah had never feared the dead. The path down was treacherous. Narrow ledges, crumbling steps carved by hands long vanished. She followed the river's sound until the walls rose high around her, and the light became a thin ribbon overhead. The air grew cool, then strangely warm, as though the stone itself exhaled. By twilight she reached the canyon floor. There she found fragments of what might once have been temples, blocks half buried in silt, their surfaces etched with symbols no one alive could read. One fragment showed a man with the head of a falcon, holding a sun in his palm. Another showed a spiral of light descending into the earth. Allah touched the carvings. The stone felt warm. From somewhere deep below came a faint sound, like a heartbeat. That night, she built a small fire beside the river and placed her clay idol before it. The flames flickered, then bent inward, drawn toward the canyon's heart. A whisper brushed her ear. "You have come far, child of the wind, further than you should." Allah froze. The voice was neither man nor woman. It came from the earth itself. "Who speaks?" she asked. "The one who waits." The ground trembled. For an instant, light rippled beneath the soil like veins awakening. The water of the river glowed faintly red. Allah lifted the idol and held it close. "Why do you wait?" "Because I was buried for what I became." "Who buried you?" The voice paused, like a breath before memory. "The one who sought to command me." His hand bore the mark of the sun. His name was Set. The fire flared, throwing sparks into the air. Allah saw, for the briefest moment, a figure standing across the river, tall, robed, his eyes like molten gold. Then he was gone. The dream in the stone. Allah dreamed that night of water turning to fire. She saw the canyon filled with light, towers rising from the depths, and a great river of molten gold flowing through them. Above it all stood Set, unchanged, eternal, his arm of flame raised toward the heavens. But behind him, something larger stirred, a vast shadow with eyes like burning suns. It reached upward, and the vision shattered. She woke to darkness and silence. The fire had gone out, though the air was still warm. When she looked toward the river, she saw faint lines of light moving beneath its surface, spirals, circles, the same pattern carved on the stones. Without knowing why, she followed them. They led her to a cavern hidden behind a waterfall of light mist. Inside, the walls shimmered faintly with gold dust. At the center lay a smooth slab of black glass, half buried in the earth. Allah brushed the dust away and gasped. Beneath the glass was a face, not stone, but something preserved between flesh and crystal. The features were strange yet human, high-boned, strong-jawed, the eyes closed as if in sleep. Across the chest ran faint bands of gold, and on the hand resting upon it, the spiral mark still glowed. "Set," she whispered. The canyon's breath deepened. The glass pulsed once beneath her touch. Cracks spidered across its surface. From the fissures rose light, not warm, but cold and brilliant, like moonlight reflected on iron. The voice returned, softer now. "You bear the mark in your blood. You are of a new world. I am of the old. Together we can bridge what was lost." Allah trembled. "What are you?" "I am the memory of the first sun. I am what remains of Egypt's last dream." She felt heat rush up her arm, searing and sweet. The mark, the spiral, burned faintly beneath her skin. "No," she whispered, trying to pull away. "You destroyed this place. And yet you found me," the voice said. "Will you let the world forget again?" The light surged, and for an instant, she saw his eyes open, gold within gold. Then the cavern collapsed, the sleep of centuries. When the dust cleared, the chamber was gone, buried beneath tons of rock. The river changed course again, covering the ruins beneath layers of silt. Allah's people searched for her for many days, but found only her clay idol, half melted, its spiral faintly glowing before it faded forever. Time passed. Empires rose and fell. The canyon endured. The age of rediscovery. Thousands of years later, what men would call modern times, a group of explorers from distant lands came to map the Grand Canyon. Among them was Dr. Mariam Seaton, a young archaeologist of Egyptian descent. She had always been fascinated by the legends whispered among the canyon tribes, stories of buried temples, of stone that breathed, of spirals of light seen beneath the cliffs at night. Most dismissed them as folklore. Mariam did not. One evening, while surveying a rarely visited gorge, she noticed patterns on the rock that made her stop cold. They were faint but unmistakable. Spirals intertwined with suns, carved in a hand far older than any known civilization of the Americas. She touched one and felt a pulse, soft but steady, like a heartbeat. For a moment, the wind seemed to carry a whisper. "Set on." She pulled back, heart pounding. "What did you say?" she murmured to the empty canyon. But the canyon, as always, only breathed. The return of light. That night, as Mariam camped near the river, the earth trembled, so lightly that only the water felt it. The stars above flickered, their reflections rippling like fire. From the canyon's depths came a faint glow, the same hue as sunrise on the Nile. She opened her field journal and wrote, "The earth remembers. Something waits beneath. As she lifted her pen, she noticed her palm. The faint impression of a spiral forming where none had been before. The river whispered, "The sun returns," and the canyon, after millennia of silence, exhaled once more. Chapter 6: The Sun Beneath the River. The canyon was restless that night. Dr. Miriam Seton woke to the sound of stone shifting, soft, deep, like the exhale of a sleeping giant. She sat upright in her tent, heart pounding. The air was hot, though the desert night should have been cold. Her lamp flickered once and went out. Outside, the sky pulsed faintly red, as if lightning flashed beyond the horizon. She stepped out into the open and saw it, a line of light, thin as a thread, running down the far canyon wall. It pulsed rhythmically, alive, and as it moved, she realized it formed a spiral, the same spiral she'd seen in the carvings, the same spiral now faintly visible on her own palm. The ground quivered beneath her feet. From the darkness came the whisper again, clearer now, unmistakable. "Seton, set on." Her breath caught. "Who are you?" she called. "What do you want?" The canyon wind answered, "To be remembered. The descent begins." By dawn, Miriam was already moving. She carried only a lantern, her pack, and her father's old field notebook, a tattered relic filled with hieroglyphic sketches from his work along the Nile decades earlier. One drawing caught her eye, a symbol of 7 rays surrounding a spiral, the same mark that haunted her dreams. She hiked toward the glowing gorge, following a path half hidden by scrub and dust. It wound steeply downward, through layers of red rock streaked with gold. As she descended, the canyon seemed to change. The walls shimmered faintly, like heat mirage, and the air grew dense, metallic. When she reached the bottom, she found the river, not the muddy brown flow she'd seen before, but clear, gleaming, and silent. Beneath its surface ran lines of light, tracing ancient patterns. She knelt by the edge, her reflection rippling. "You're real," she whispered. A voice rippled back, soft as water. "So are you." The cavern of echoes. She followed the light along the riverbank until she came upon a gap in the cliff, a fissure narrow enough to slip through sideways. Warm air breathed from within. The spiral on her palm burned faintly. Inside, the walls were carved smooth. Faded figures danced across them. Men and women in linen robes, carrying torches, falcons, suns, serpents. A tall man raising his hand toward a sphere of light. Beneath the carvings were lines of unfamiliar script, curving symbols that seemed halfway between hieroglyphs and something older. Miriam ran her fingers across the wall. This can't be pre-Columbian. These are Egyptian hands." Her lantern flickered. The air vibrated. "They came before the world was divided," whispered the canyon. "They built and were buried." She froze. "Set," she said aloud. "You're still here." The light along the walls flared in answer. The passage widened into a vast chamber. It was like stepping into a dream. Columns of red stone rose toward a ceiling veined with gold, each engraved with spirals that seemed to move when she looked too long. At the center stood a black slab of glass, the same kind of substance she'd seen in the legends and half-believed accounts from early explorers who spoke of impossible stone. Beneath the glass, she saw a shape, a face, a hand, and the faintest glow, pulsing from within. Miriam dropped to her knees. The archaeologist in her wanted to measure, record, preserve, but something deeper, something ancient, wanted to touch. She reached out. The moment her palm met the glass, the mark burned white-hot. Light erupted through the chamber. Images crashed into her mind. A river of gold, a city carved into flame, a man standing before a sun that bled. She saw Set, alive, shouting to the heavens as the canyon split apart beneath him. She felt the heat, the power, the pride, and she felt the silence that followed, the burial, the forgetting. A voice spoke inside her head. "You have my name. You have my blood." Miriam staggered back. "No, Seton, not Set. I'm not you. All names return to their source. You carry the echo of my mark." The glass cracked. A single ray of light burst upward, slicing the air. Dust swirled into spirals around her. The voice deepened, merging with the pulse of the canyon itself. "Will you finish what I began?" The choice. Miriam stood trembling before the slab. Through the widening cracks, she saw movement, the faint stir of fingers, the shift of breath. Set's body, preserved in molten stone, was waking. "You destroyed this place," she whispered. "You tore open the earth for your glory. Glory is not destruction. Creation demands sacrifice." "No," she said, tears cutting lines through the dust on her face. "Creation demands humility." She pulled her father's field knife from her pack, the obsidian blade he'd used on digs for decades, and placed it against her burning palm. You gave me this mark, she said, then take it back. She sliced across the spiral. Light exploded from her hand, pouring into the cracks of the slab. The ground shook. The voice screamed, not in pain, but in fury, in disbelief. You would deny the sun? You would bury me again? Yes, she said, her voice steady. The world doesn't need another god. It needs silence. The chamber roared. Light consumed everything. The rising and the fall. When Miriam awoke, she was lying beside the river. The morning sun burned orange on the horizon. The fissure she had entered was gone, sealed by tons of rock. Her hand was unmarked. The spiral had vanished. She looked toward the canyon's heart. Smoke, or perhaps mist, rose faintly from the depths, forming a column that caught the first light of dawn. For a moment, she thought she saw a face in it, proud, defiant, and smiling. Then it dissolved. She opened her notebook and wrote, "Set sleeps once more beneath the river of stone. The mark is gone, but the memory remains. The Grand Canyon is not only earth and time. It is a tomb of the gods and perhaps a mirror of our own pride." She closed the book. The wind picked up, scattering sand across the ledge, covering her footprints as quickly as they were made. In the distance, the river glimmered like a blade of sunlight, quiet, eternal, waiting. Epilogue, the breath of Ra. That night, long after Miriam had gone, a single spark of light flickered beneath the canyon floor. It pulsed once, twice, then stilled. In the darkness below, something vast turned in its sleep. Its hand still bore the mark of the spiral sun. The canyon exhaled, soft and slow, and for the briefest moment, the wind carried a whisper, "All dawns return."